All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
Thank you all. I will tell you something that I don't know if you're aware of, but my favorite audience, my favorite recorded audience is the Thursday recorded audience. Just it's a fact. I love my Albert, who is back.
Albert, thank you.
He is here on Thursdays and Fridays typically. And Kim is another one who I adore.
Kim, how are you?
And she is here every day. And we are a live show. It probably feels like a radio show to you. This is a show that came from the radio. These are people I worked with on the radio. And we had a very successful radio talk show, politics and news, great guests, and many of those guests have come over to this platform with us.
What?
And that's a pretty exciting thing. And I welcome you in if you're new, and if you're a regular, then you can tell the new people that we oftentimes start a couple of minutes after the top of the hour. And I'm blaming...
I blame you.
I think maybe it is my fault. So I'm excited to get going. We got a lot to get to. Terrific guests for you today. I'll tell you, Russ Baker joins us bottom of this hour, and if you don't know Russ Baker's stuff, you are going to fall in love with his takes. And this guy is a prolific journalist who writes a regular column and does regular journalism at a website that I will tell you about. And I've been a paid supporter of this website even before this show came on. And so it's really cool to have the guy who created the website on. Actually, someone else I know is a journalist at that website and has an opinion piece up now. It's called Who, What, Why, this website. And there it is, Who, What, Why. And I think you'll find a kind of independent journalism there that is something that we increasingly need. And I also think you'll find a kind of investigative journalism and then an opinion journalism that will just broaden your perspective. So Russ joins us bottom of the hour. Hour two is David Katz, the esteemed former federal prosecutor, now defense attorney and brilliant legal analyst. I mean, you can't look at stuff going on in America and go, wait a minute, what's legal, what's not legal, what's actionable, what's not? The government of the United States having officers perpetrating heinous acts on the streets of Minneapolis, at minimum, having killed a woman on the streets of Minneapolis, claiming self-defense, which is flimsy at best as a defense, and then wonder why that same government wouldn't investigate, again at minimum, their own officer. I mean, how can you have an officer involved in a shooting like that and not do some kind of formal investigation of the officer? Instead, the U.S. government decides they're going to investigate the victim and the victim's family. It's crazy. It's a grotesque Alice in Wonderland bizarro landscape that we're living in. But it is grotesque. As I said, it is chilling, but that's where we are. That's just one of the things that is going on. And so anyway, when you get to the legality of all of this, David Katz can speak to that. And then you get to the legality of the Venezuela move on the part of this administration and the fact that yesterday there was an attempt to hold Trump to account with a war powers vote. Isn't that right, Kim? I mean, it was once again a situation in which the Democrats all show up to try to restrain Trump's power in this Venezuelan flex taking over Venezuela in effect. And what you end up with is Republicans, again, permitting, with considerable arm twisting, from what I understand, permitting this Venezuelan military flex on the part of this government, the U.S. government. So I guess what I'm trying to say is the one chance that you had to restrain Donald Trump in his militarism and his expansionist vision of American power at the business end of a gun, that was overruled.
Specifically, it was Senators Josh Hawley and Todd Young, Republicans, who flipped their votes and will now block this measure to restrict Venezuela strikes. So Trump managed to flip those two votes in his favor.
And so that was a close vote.
Yeah.
And Trump actually had to get on the phone to, talk to these guys. But, I mean, I think Trump's implied threats are powerful, and he's able to get his way. So that's where we are. Chaplain Fred, who is quickly becoming a Hall of Fame supporter of the show. Yeah. Thank you for the super chat. Hi, Mark Albert Kim. Good day, sir. Yeah. What's good day, sir?
Good day, sir.
Yeah.
That's pure speculation.
Mark, did you hear that Iran cut all communications in Iran, and the only way of communicating was via Starlink? But Russia gave Iran jamming equipment to cut Starlink communication. No, I didn't hear that. As of this broadcast, I did not hear that.
They had cut the internet there for a time. I don't know if that's still in place.
Yeah, I didn't hear about this back and forth, though. You know what I mean? With the jamming, and I don't know. Just because you mentioned Starlink, again, I was talking about Elon Musk's power. I mean, Musk has tremendous power over many of these regions that are affected by war. And so the strategic movement of troops and military across various regions, again, affected by war, are insanely leveraged by this guy who has government contracts in the U.S., Starlink contracts elsewhere in the world. And as you know, his AI has just been given total access to Pentagon classified materials as they try to integrate AI increasingly into the military and the Pentagon as far as building a blueprint for strategies going forward. All I'm trying to say is this one man, Elon Musk, has tremendous power. He dismantled the American government in large measure, from USAID to the EPA, fired tens of thousands of federal employees, and now wields tremendous power, not as a government contractor, but as someone who has government contracts, but additionally has contracts across the globe. What was the other comment? I see it now. Nullifidian, I just read that Trump wants to send in troops and invoke the Insurrection Act because, regrettably, an ICE officer was attacked by a broomstick on top of 3,000 ICE already there. Motives? Yeah. Thank you, Scott. The deal with the Trump and Insurrection Act, he seems to be flirting with it. He mentions it often. I'll talk to David Katz about that again. The legal side of that, I think, is critical, and David can explain what additional powers would be conferred to both Trump and troops there in Minnesota. Ola from Minnesota says, nebulous void, thank you. Thank you for all our Minnesotans. We're thinking of you. What a nice, wonderful, beautiful aspect to Minnesotans there is. There's a kind of a warmth that you find even in Canadians. They have that politeness and that kind of
nice
stuff
American.
That you get. Right. As you get closer,
Yeah.
You come down to where we live and it's like, hey, shut the F up, man. I'm trying to, whatever. But Minnesota just doesn't generally have that aspect. Best wishes from another stinking hot day down under, says Glenn B. Yeah, I wanted to run my my video. Glenn sent me a video from down there, and I'll get to it. Things have just been pretty crazy, as you know. Here's to the coolest Katz, David Katz. Please ask Katz, what exactly are my rights if I'm stopped by ICE? says Harry Magna. Well, remind me to ask Katz about that. All right, thank you for your comments. Thanks for the support. Hit the thumbs up, if you will. That helps us in the world of YouTube. Love having you all here, and much to get to.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Before I get to Russ Baker, bottom of the hour, I want to just kind of get a state of the state. I know I could start anywhere. You can spin this wheel of authoritarian craziness that is Donald Trump and this administration. It's a grim picture in many ways, but I wanted to first get to ICE. And we have a poll. There is a flash poll up, and it is in the chat.
It's a Mark Thompson Show flash poll.
Yes, it is. Jump on the poll. Let me see it, Albert. Can you the poll questions and the poll itself, the poll question, and there it is. Albert has it for you there. It's in the chat if you're joining us. And it is, should the U.S. defund ICE? Yes, redirect funds to communities, says 62% of you so far. No, ICE is necessary. 2% say that. Reform it, don't defund it. That's kind of where I am. 34%. Not sure, need more info. 2%. Again, it's a flash poll. It is up right now in the live chat on YouTube, so definitely jump.
It's a Mark Thompson Show flash poll.
Jump on it and be part of it, and we will keep you posted on the results of that. Meantime, speaking of ICE and speaking of their aggressive tactics, here's what happened in the last 24 hours in Minnesota.
Overnight, violent crashes between federal agents and protesters in Minneapolis after a federal agent shot a man during an immigration operation. According to the Department of Homeland Security, a federal law enforcement officer shot a Venezuelan man who they say fled a traffic stop and then attacked the officer, adding that the officer fired to defend his life, hitting the man in the leg. The department also saying 2 other people assaulted the officer with a snow shovel and broom. The injured man is in custody. He and the officer were taken to the hospital. The scene quickly descending into chaos. Smoke and flashbangs filling the night sky. Agents deploying chemical irritants as demonstrators sent fireworks in their direction. ABC affiliate KSTP was on the ground as crowds gathered around the city.
The smell of those chemical irritants is definitely in the air. You can see a group of ICE agents right now. It looks like they have at least one person in custody.
This is already a very tense situation, and we do not need this to escalate any further.
Officials calling for peace, acknowledging the city is on edge.
For those that are taking the bait, you are not helping. And you are not helping the undocumented immigrants in our city.
It comes 1 week after the fatal shooting of 37-year-old American citizen and mother Renee Good. The incident sparking protests, violent scenes playing out on a daily basis. Agents firing pepper spray, dragging people from cars. This newly released video shows the frantic moments as heavily armed federal agents used a battering ram to enter an immigrant family's home in Minneapolis.
Can you put the guns down? There's kids in this house. There is kids in this house. Show the warrant first.
37-year-old Garrison Gibson, an immigrant from Liberia, was facing removal for a decade-old drug conviction. But his lawyer says he has been checking in with authorities for years.
So if he's this dangerous person, then why are they letting him walk around?
And once again, the mayor here in Minneapolis saying the situation here with thousands of federal agents here on the ground is simply unsustainable. He says his officers are working tirelessly, responding to this chaos instead of focusing on basic 911 calls. George.
Yeah, so this is the problem. There are sacrifices being made by law enforcement in Minnesota as well to protect the community in other ways. You know, what they've done is created a chaos of their own. These ICE agents, these are thugs who move in under the cover of ICE, and a guy gets shot, this Venezuelan man, and you have the lack of an investigation into the Renee Good killing, and there is a creation of tensions and of chaos in Minneapolis that you just don't need. I mean, to say you don't need it is, of course, to be putting it politely. The discussion of Trump and the Insurrection Act is a reasonable one because he's threatened to invoke it a number of times. And I should say, I mean, this is a 19th century law that allows him to deploy active duty service members domestically without congressional approval. And there's a certain absurdity to it since the problems were completely concocted. But this is the absurdity that Trump and his regime have wanted to create. This both absurdity and crisis that is real. And he said, if the corrupt politicians of Minnesota don't obey the law and stop the professional agitators and insurrectionists from attacking the patriots of ICE who are only trying to do their job, I will institute the Insurrection Act, which many presidents have done before me, and quickly put an end to the travesty that is taking place in that once great state. Again, this is after a federal officer shot somebody after an attempted traffic stop in Minneapolis. Now, he shot him in the leg this time. So Renee Good was shot and killed, as you're aware. And that ICE officer, Jonathan Ross, as far as we know, has not faced any kind of reprimand or administrative leave while investigation's going on at all. So you've got Kristi Noem, who is the cosplaying incompetent at the top of Homeland Security with a budget that has been supercharged. And she is referencing the fact that she's discussed with Trump the use of the Insurrection Act. She said, quote, he certainly has the constitutional authority to utilize that. When asked about this, House Speaker Mike Johnson told reporters, of course, what he normally says is what? I don't know much about it. I didn't see it. Minnesota is out of control, he said. You have local and state leaders who seem to be encouraging violence and all of this madness, and the president's frustrated about it, and so are we. So this is a situation that is, I mean, I guess in the early 90s, when Los Angeles had the riots associated with the Rodney King trial, that's when they did, Bush was president, invoke the Insurrection Act. I mean, we don't have that, but we could get there because I'm talking about the kind of overflowing violence that informed that situation. That was a situation that was teetering on the verge of a kind of widespread violence and rioting. And there was pockets of it already in Los Angeles in the early 90s. But this isn't that. Here, you have ICE agents who are, it would seem, stirring up their own version of violence. They're performing these roadside checks. They're pulling people over. They're going house to house in Minnesota. This is insane, checking on people's papers. I mean, there is a cartoonish Nazi Gestapo aspect to this that would be, it's a dark cartoon, but it is understandable in no universe. This is a direct attempt to cow a public, to engender fear in a public that otherwise isn't fearful of government. So you have these ICE officers empowered to perpetrate whatever violence they need to, whatever violence they want to. I mean, you've seen the videos of the ICE agents knocking the phone out of someone's hand. Are you scared yet? Did you get that, Albert? Play the priest speaking about are you scared yet? This really speaks to a motivation, and it speaks to the general disposition of so many of these thugs who work for ICE. Go ahead.
An ICE agent literally came over to me and said, "What did you say?" I said, "I am not afraid." And they pointed a gun in my face. ICE put handcuffs on my hands and put me in a black SUV. And then a few moments later, they came back and they said, "Are you afraid yet?" And I said, "No." And then they said it, "Well, you're white. You wouldn't be fun anyway." It was then that I knew that this staging, that these ICE raids are really about fear and intimidation. An ICE agent literally came over to me and said, "What did you say?" I said, "I am not afraid." And they pointed a gun in my face. ICE put handcuffs on my hands and put me in a black SUV. And then a few moments later, they came back and they said, "Are you afraid yet?" And I said, "No." And then they said it, "Well, you're white. You wouldn't be fun anyway." It was
so there
then.
You have it. I mean, that's the general disposition, I think, of many who are the paid thugs going into Minneapolis. And last thing before I get to Russ, play me Bondi, if you will, Albert. I have Bondi for you because you see, I think, in the Attorney General, the total capture of government by this craziness, this chaos, and this violence. It's government violence perpetrated on the people. Go ahead.
Move on to Minnesota. You have multiple employees now that have resigned. They didn't like the fact that there's an investigation into some of these groups. We call it astroturfing. There are different groups, even crowds that you can purchase, believe it or not, which is insane. And they didn't want to be a part of this. And you need to get to the bottom of is who might be financing the instances that would be putting ICE agents' lives in jeopardy. Isn't that legitimate? That seems legitimate to me, especially in light of, an 8,000% increase in the threat level and a 1,300% increase in, attacks against these guys.
Yeah. Sean, we support Secretary Noem. We support our men and women of Homeland Security and ICE who are out there taking predators off the street every day around the country, and they're doing it in Minnesota. What happened in Minnesota? We had 6 prosecutors who suddenly decided they didn't want to support the men and women in ICE. One of them was busy doing a photo shoot with the New York Times while ICE was out there risking their lives. So they came, they said, "We want to resign, but we want to use our annual leave up until April," meaning they wanted the taxpayers to pay for them to go on vacation because they decided they didn't want to support law enforcement. So the breaking news tonight, I fired them all. They're fired from the office. And our U.S. attorney there, Rosen, he's great. He was just confirmed 3 months ago. So he has his hands full. And that's what we're facing around the country, the deep state, in many of these offices. And we learned these people had been out there interviewing at liberal law firms prior to this. But I'll tell you what, from a personnel level, they'd be an HR nightmare. So people better look into them. One of them actually in 2022 defended BLM when they burned down a pawn shop and someone was murdered. Yeah, they want to be part of the resistance. Yeah, bring it on. They're not going to be working for Donald Trump and the Department of Justice any longer.
Now, you see how strong she is. I mean, this is what they love. They lean in, and there's great strength. Talking about the fact that these 6 attorneys who are working at the Justice Department, they resigned, okay? They resigned in protest, but she strongly speaks to their departure as though she fired them. And they're a bunch of libs that we got rid of, and they're bad for the system, and they were costing the taxpayer money. This, from the entire ICE endeavor, supercharged by taxpayer money, is a waste on a level we can't even contemplate.
Here's a question. Don't you still have to pay vacation time to people you fire?
Of course. The
it
entire
doesn't
thing is,
matter. Quit or be fired, whatever it is. They resigned in protest first, and you still have to pay them vacation, big dummy.
this is she's really, and Hannity's, of course, serves everything up. He gives you the answer before you even speak. Shouldn't you be investigating them? Shouldn't you be investigating these liberal groups? This is really the play here. This is the strategy. Anyway, that's a little bit of what's happening in Minnesota, and a little bit happening of what is happening at the government level. I mean, this is a government capture that has taken place under Trump, so that you have a Department of Justice completely taken over by Trump. You have this Department of Homeland Security, which has just created a private army for Trump and for MAGA. It is it's a dark time in America, and honestly, it's a time that we should all be more connected to what's going on than ever before. Pam Bondi let Epstein go in Florida when she was the Attorney General there. Pam Bondi is just like Trump in a sense. She has a shingle out, and she's for sale. I mean, we saw what happened with Trump University in Florida. There was going to be a judgment. There was a judgment against Trump University for $25 million. Trump donated to Bondi's campaign, and she dropped, yes, the entire incident with Trump University, and then went on with the Epstein trial. So the Epstein files.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I don't want to digress here and there too much. I want to get to someone who I've had mad respect for a long time. I'm a paid subscriber to his website long before this show even existed. I always loved what they do at Who, What, Why. I know one of their journalists, Klaus, who really does great stuff. And Russ Baker, though, is one of those guys who's prolific. You can find his stuff in the New York Times, the New Yorker, the Washington Post, Esquire, Vanity Fair, the Christian Science Monitor, the Nation, the Guardian, Wired, the Village Voice. He is the editor-in-chief and founder of the nonprofit news website Who, What, Why. How about it for Russ Baker, everybody? Hello, sir.
Hey, Mark. Good to see you.
It's such a pleasure to have you on. I must tell you, I've been a fan for so long. I don't think we've ever actually met, but I feel as though I know you because I follow your stuff pretty closely. I love the independent journalism that you do at Who, What, Why, and I've made that point about a half hour ago. I really feel as though, this is a time when Who, What, Why and other sites like it really shine, and we must depend on it, particularly in view of the way journalism is changing and the way that broadcast media, where a lot of people have sort of been taking in information, has been, I think, completely captured by a right-wing agenda. We've seen it just today. The FCC head is today approving a merger or considering a merger that would allow a right-wing entity to own most of the television stations in America.
Yeah, this is you're talking about my whole career, trying to work within what I consider generally high quality legacy or establishment institutions. I was looking you up. You've worked at all kinds of places. I grew up in LA. I see you were at it was the KCOP and so on. Sorry, I missed your era there. It sounds like it was fun. But in any case, I have over the years, as you say, I have dipped into legacy media. I had some good experiences, but in general, I think what we're talking about here today is a couple of big issues. Well, we're talking about a lot of things, but a couple of big issues. One is we didn't set ourselves up right for success. We went with the establishment, and we trusted the establishment. And it's not that the people who work for the establishment are bad, but they're not really permitted to ask the tough questions. They're not really permitted to be entirely blunt. They never were. That wasn't really the model. And so how do you now, when we have this incredible emergency on our hands, this really, really scary, dark situation, this curtain coming down, it seems. We're still counting on them to sort of get us out of this, whether it's them or it's the members of Congress, many of whom are establishment figures themselves, often wealthy people who were basically able to buy their seat. So we're in real trouble because we didn't create alternative institutions. We didn't support alternative voices. I can tell you even today, people like the work we do, but we struggle to keep the lights on, even today. And people say, you do great work. And then they say things like, well, got to go. I'm heading off on vacation, or, I've got my new startup or whatever, which I understand. But things are really, really grim. I come from a background. My mother's family survived the Holocaust. And, we're headed in that direction. I personally covered the Hutu Tutsi massacres in Central Africa in the 80s. And I covered the fall of Ceausescu, the dictator, and the fall of the Berlin Wall. I lived in the former Yugoslavia, where you had another genocide. And, Mark, the issue is that, there are a couple of things. Number one, there are plenty of people in any society who are problematic, let's say, morally. This is something we don't talk about. And we just kind of lie about everything. We have certain sacrosanct institutions. You know this. You go to a football game, and let's pay tribute to our men in uniform. Well, sure, fine. But why not pay attention to people who are in the uniform of sanitation? Why not pay attention to people in the uniform of teachers, or in the uniform? I mean, why do they denigrate people who work for the government who don't don't carry a weapon? Why are all these other people not respected and honored? And so we have basic problems with this kind of thing. Nobody speaks up about that. And so we've gotten ourselves in a situation where you talk about people like Pam Bondi and so on. These are really deficient human beings. These are people who are not, they're not good people. I would say they're bad people. They're basically bad people. They're always going to be looking for an opportunity, whatever country they may be in, those kind of people. And we have to speak up about values, about decency. We should have been doing it the entire time. We shouldn't have been celebrating so many rich people, which I think our society does. And I also think that one of the problems is that we're waiting for, we're waiting for what? We're waiting for Jeff Bezos to save us somehow. I mean, I don't know. I'm sure you've been talking about the raid on the home of the Washington Post reporter. Obviously Jeff Bezos should not own that paper, but moreover, we shouldn't be in a position where we're sending him our money every single day. There's a lot of work to be done here to fix this society. That's the long-term stuff. The immediate stuff is crisis right now, and it's not going to be the fancy people who are going to lead us out of this. It's going to be people like Mark Thompson. Honestly, it's going to be people like you helping guide people, advise them on things that they can do. Obviously, we need people to be a lot more shook up than they are, and not just that. I appreciate all the people going out about ICE, but we need this all over the country. We need people to rearrange their lives for a little while and get out there. If we could have a general strike, that's what I think we need. We need a general strike, and we all stop doing what we're doing, and we get out in the streets for days and weeks and months, and this thing will end.
Is that what you've seen, given the journalism you've done through the decades in other rising autocracies? You've seen that as effective?
It worked. It actually worked, but it worked. You always had a handful of very brave people. They were usually unsung. They were ordinary people you never heard of. I still remember being in East Germany before the wall came down and going to the home of a pastor. And he had a few people who gathered in secret at his home, and they were talking. And then a little later, I saw people wearing ski masks, getting on buses and furtively, quickly handing out little pieces of paper saying something. These people were risking their lives, but it started popping up all over the place. And pretty quickly, the people who are not as gutsy or don't feel they're able to do anything, good people within the police or the military, they start quickly going, I didn't do the right thing, but hey, I needed a paycheck. But now I see this thing beginning to shift. I better start talking to my own colleagues and think about what we ought to do, because this kind of change has to take place. And we need people in the government. We need people in the military. We need people in all these institutions to get with the people.
The recharacterization of so many of these protesters to whom you've referred, just even in general, as agitators, as paid agitators, as radicals. There is a casting of them in public media, which is increasingly controlled by the right, and it's a seizing of the narrative that is so very scary. I mean, you wouldn't think that you could kill a woman in cold blood the way we saw happen in Minnesota, and it's on video from multiple angles, and somehow you'd be able to, as the government, seize the narrative to the point somehow that there are a bunch of Americans who are ready to kind of move along, get along.
Yeah, well, Mark, you're really looking at a situation where, I mean, if you and I were to just watch Fox News, I think they are persuasive of their viewpoint. Their viewpoint may involve lies and deceptions, but I don't know that we can criticize the people who are soaked in that, because that's what they know, and they believe that those people wouldn't lie to them. The truth is, doing the lying, I mean, it's Rupert Murdoch, it's a whole bunch of investors, it's various companies that are partners of theirs. We don't talk about these people except for little activist groups. Nobody really talks about who are the people at the top at Fox who's invested in it, who advertise there. These are the people who are enabling this false reality.
And apparently not in any way motivated by a sort of moral imperative, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Well, not at all. And how do we invite these people to live such good lives and commit essentially the crimes that they're committing? I am very much for calling out the wealthiest, most powerful people in this country on a continuing basis, and I don't see anybody doing it.
Well, you did a book all about that. I mean, your book really details the most powerful families in America and their grip on government. Sorry.
Oh, you're talking about family of secrets. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, right. And that was, of course, the Bushes and all of their allies. And people now say, well, they weren't bad in retrospect. No, they were bad in retrospect. They were really, really bad. And they were the precursor of what we have today. They made all this lying possible. They deregulated. They did all the things that set us up for a perfect storm. So let us not. They should not be let off the hook. But I think anyway that we do need to know who these are. I've actually made an effort. In the past year, I've had the opportunity to be invited into some fairly exclusive places where I've been getting to know some of the very wealthiest people in the country and talking to them. And, individually, they try to make a case that they're decent people. But when you talk to them, you can see they don't know that much. They don't know more about what's going on than we do. I mean, this is really, really scary. People with tremendous big companies, tremendous resources, you start talking to them and they do not know more than we do. They certainly aren't smarter. They aren't more soulful, but they have all of these assets and they're scared themselves and they're trying to kind of go along and do whatever they have to do to kind of keep their piece of the pie.
The work you do at Who, What, Why is associated with both journalism and opinion pieces. And there's an opinion piece up right now from my old friend Klaus. The only way to prepare for Trump is to expect the worst. And Klaus references acquiring Greenland, which is, of course, implicitly breaking up NATO, right? And he goes on to talk about the way in which Trump, in his imperialist flex, is changing the face of America and changing the face of the world. I mean, this is all happening in the first year of his presidency. I wonder if you could speak to that, particularly because of your background reporting from different places across the world and seeing different governments interact with America historically. This moment in time feels quite unique.
It's totally unique. We've never seen anything like it in the entire history of this country. I wrote a piece about that issue, and I'll just go right to it. Trump is, in fact, mentally ill. He is mentally ill. He can't even control himself. And unless we deal with the fact that he's mentally ill, I think a lot of the other people, I've been talking to the psychologists and psychiatrists who look at these folks. I think a lot of the people in the cabinet can be considered to have various kinds of mental illnesses. They're all different. But when you have a bunch of people who are mentally ill, you're not going to appeal to them. You can't. And so the question is, they really shouldn't be there. That's the issue. And, they shouldn't be here. They are here. Somehow they were elected. And that puts us in a difficult position because there, as far as I know, there is no sanity clause, pardon the pun. And I don't know what you do about that exactly, but I think there are a lot of people who are not mentally ill, who are in government. There are a lot of people who are not mentally ill who are in business. And I think there are a lot of people who are not mentally ill who are in the military. And also, by the way, in the FBI and in police departments. And I'd like to know what these people are thinking and doing. I don't know if you have those kinds of people on your show. I'd love to see people being interviewed, former heads of FBI bureaus. They're retired. I'd like to hear them. I'd like to say, well, what do you think about what's going on at the FBI? And what are you doing about it? Are you talking to people who are in there now? Where is this thing going? Because that's where the only change can come, when it's some people on the outside and some people on the inside talking and saying, this is an emergency we had not anticipated.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I'm really chilled by, Russ, is the fact that many of these people to whom you've referred, I'm talking about the ones who are in government now, and it might apply to people who have left government as well from supervisory positions, they're cowed by the fear. I mean, there is a real effort to bring government down on people quickly. This is the reason he's cowed an entire party. I mean, these guys were talking about Trump as a bigoted idiot. Publicly, they were talking about him that way on the campaign trail. We played a bunch of stuff from Marco Rubio and all the rest of his cast of clowns, and they were very much almost jihadists against Trump. J.D. Vance was one of them. And now, I believe, Vance, I think, motivated, and Rubio probably in this case, motivated by personal gain and personal agenda. But others in government, very much fearful of the kind of violent flex that he and his followers can bring upon them.
Absolutely. And the sayings about fear, I mean, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. That is the worst thing, is the fear, because as soon as you're fearful, you're weak. And you're not fearful. We all have trepidation, but we continue to do what we do. The only answer is action and speech. I'm also wondering, by the way, who are these people's kids? Does J.D. Vance, all these other people, they have kids. Some of their kids are, in some of the cases, the kids are of voting age and so on. I wonder what the kids think. I want the brothers and sisters and parents of these people, what they think. I don't see them being interviewed. I don't see attempts necessarily, even saying what were attempts made. I mean, what happened to Ivanka? She just vanished. You remember her, Ivanka?
Sure.
I mean, whatever happened to her? How does she feel about all this? I cannot believe that she thinks this is okay. I cannot believe that she doesn't know that her father is mentally ill. And I think we need to be talking openly about all this.
Yeah, she had said after the first term, we're stepping back. Jared made the same point. They were ostracized from a lot of stuff because of their involvement in Trump, the first season of Trump, the first 4 years. And then Kushner now, as we all know, is just, he's fingerprints are over everything. I mean, he's as involved as anyone, and Witkoff and all the rest with, and the corruption. Russ, I'll just say this quickly, that I was, of course, anticipating a kind of unfettered corruption on the part of Trump in this 4-year term that we're living through now. And on one level, I thought, I guess it's just kind of baked in. I never had a notion that literally everything would be corrupted in the kind of toxic way that we've seen American policy totally corrupted by self-enrichment, ego, and megalomania.
That's not only is that true. I've been posting. I am still on X because I try to do battle. I try to reply to Elon, and sometimes I get some traction. But I've noticed, for example, on X how dishonest that is. Mostly bots. I started looking at all the people putting all those aggressive comments against me and you and so forth. Started looking at them. They're not even real people. And so Elon Musk, I mean, the guy's a fake. He's a fraud. And, maybe there's something real to him. I don't know what it is. I haven't really studied his career in depth to see just how much of the vaunted genius he actually is. But yes, it's the degradation of everything. It's dishonesty in everything. Somebody like some of the people around Trump, they are just strictly opportunists. They may not fit any definition of mental illness, but they certainly lack any kind of morality. I can say that. And I wonder why aren't we talking about Jared Kushner constantly? I mean, why is he not being held accountable on a daily basis? You could have they had a clock with the hostages, when all the hostages were released. You could have a clock. How many days since Jared Kushner started participating in this corruption? I mean, why don't we hold all these people accountable? There's so much media out there. I admit, you're not going to see it from the large media, but there are hundreds, thousands of podcasts and things, and everybody should be talking about the behavior of these people. Because look, the ICE agents are a bunch of hooligans. Those are, you know, those people in high school. Those were people who always wanted an opportunity. They were angry misfits. That's who they are. And maybe a few of them just desperately need to put food on the table, and that was the only job they could get. Okay, that's not a good thing either. But it's not about those people. It's about the Jared Kushners of the world and the compromises that they are willing to make to get ahead and to stay ahead.
Well, and the kind of aggressive violence that we've seen from this private police force is really what I want. I understand it's publicly funded, but it's really operating at the discretion of Trump, Nome, et cetera, with their directives. This extends to everyone. So what you're describing is, I think, a situation where everyone's anxious, everyone's scared. There's a sense of so much information we just don't even know what to cover. The corruption from Jared, as you've mentioned, and the fact that he and Witkoff have their fingerprints over everything. I mean, Russia, Ukraine with self-enrichment there, the Middle East with self-enrichment there, the crypto platform with the Trump family in ownership of the crypto platform and the meme coins. I mean, they're like fat men at the all-you-can-eat buffet when it comes to corruption. It's just insane what they're heaping onto their plate. And you're right, it gets lost in the noise of the day's events, which are always a 5-alarm fire.
Yeah, and it's just too much. You know, it's too much. That's my column I started writing for this week. It's just too much, and I was sort of afraid you were going to ask me to comment on very specific things in the news over the last 24 hours because I couldn't even do it, and I appreciate all of my old friends like David Johnston and so on who come on, and they've got all those little specific facts and statistics. I'm more interested in the big picture, really, and the long view here. And I think they're both extremely important. But when we talk about the specific issues, we have to think about how are we going to get that to affect some kind of change. If now, I will say the cameras are a good thing, right? The cameras, the fact that, and I see that the governor Minnesota has called for everybody get your camera out. This is great stuff because this is action. And even people who watch Fox News at some point, their kid, their neighbor, or somebody's going to show them something and they'll say, well, that doesn't look very good. I mean, I think some of those people are reachable, but we have to have a guerrilla effort to kind of get around Fox News and get to those people.
Yeah, I really feel as though, and I thought this at the very beginning when ICE first moved into Los Angeles, where the pictures of them taking down, guys at Home Depot and chasing down some landscaper who's 53 years old, whose kid won a Medal of Honor in the U.S. military. I mean, it's just crazy what they were doing. I said that this leak of various photos and videos reminded me of the way Vietnam changed when we started to see the horror. There was already a robust anti-war movement, but bringing the war home through television at that time, it just changed the game. And I feel as though there's an eyewitness aspect to these cameras to which you've referred, that, and a way to get it out. You don't need to like send it to one of the networks anymore. You are the network. You just put it up on your social media and it has a virality of its own, you know, Russ?
I totally agree. And by the way, looking at this picture, I've been thinking a lot about demonstrations. Sadly, they have historically had a kind of a performative element where people wanted to be seen. And so you would have people who would dress colorfully or eccentrically would be the ones who would get in the pictures. And as soon as you have that and you're telegraphing somebody with green hair or whatever it is, they put that on Fox and that thing is weaponized. But you see, this crowd looks okay because it looks like regular people. But what you really want is you want people there wearing military uniforms. You want people wearing medals. You want people like that gentleman you showed, the priest or whatever he was, the minister. You want people wearing clerical collars. That is what you need. You want elderly people. You want people who are or look like farmers. When you get that, that is when the thing begins to flip.
You know, it's funny you just mentioned this, and I only have a minute left, but the clapback against Mark Kelly that Hegseth has created, you know, which is just another level of insanity, just telling military people in a video, don't disobey illegal orders. And it's clearly something we ran video of Hegseth saying the same thing. But it reminded me, if you can bring this, again, I made this point the other day, if you can bring this against Mark Kelly, it reminded me of, again, Vietnam, where you had Vietnam vets against the war. It was a huge part of the Vietnam protest movement. I mean, would you have brought charges against all of those guys who didn't approve of Pentagon policy or a U.S. policy in Vietnam? This administration is really unmoored when it comes to the way they're going after a lot of this protest.
And that's a mistake. And from my own experience over the years, they are making mistakes, and that gives me some heart. They're going after the wrong people. And if they keep doing that, and if all of us keep getting the word out and sharing this stuff all over the place, I think public opinion is shifting, and I think it will continue to shift.
whowhatwhy.org. I am a paid subscriber, and you should be also. Keep them alive and keep that great journalism and the great opinions you'll get there going. whowhatwhy.org. There's a link to it under this video, and there'll be a link to it under the breakout video of this video as well. Hey, Russ, I hope you'll come by again, man. I'm just a huge fan, and thank you.
Anytime, and I appreciate what you do, Mark.
Russ Baker, everybody. Right on.
The Mark Thompson Show.
He's a true treasure. Thank you for your support here. I'll get to a couple quickly before I move on. Trump is using ICE to train his personal goon squad to protect him and do his bidding in the future. That's not so much to do with illegal aliens. Of course, that's true. Thank you, Renee. It's not to protect him so much. I think it is to protect his agenda, which may be what you mean. And it has very much to do with voter suppression. It has very much to do with what we were talking about with Russ Baker, which is, cowing the public, creating anxiety and fear in the public. So you don't want to do everything from protest to speak out at all, to put anything on your social media. I mean, this is the degree of aggression. You know how AI is being used and weaponized against Americans who speak out in protest. So I think this is all of that kind. Michelle Crocker says it's a page out of a certain playbook that shall remain nameless because it's repeating what others have already said. Thank you for the $5 super chat and the comment. Also, Maria Clayton, I adore you all. I mean, can you possibly improve on I adore you all?
Big shout out.
Thank you for your voices and updates during these dark times, and a heart. And thank you, Maria Clayton. You bring out the little girl in me.
Thank you so much.
Luis, since we're all into rebranding and everything, for accuracy, I think I should be rebranded. ISSE, Immigration shock and suppression enforcement. Hashtag US.SS.for-real. It does feel very SS. Got to say it. It's very Gestapo. I mean, I just felt as though World War II was such a... Now, we've seen all the movies, Papers, Please, you know, pulling people out of their homes. This is what's happening. You know, Black Hawk helicopter dropping guys down into a Chicago neighborhood. It's all performative theater designed to scare you. And it works. I mean, I get that minister told the ICE agents, I'm not scared, but just last night, they pulled people out of their homes, including kids, into the freezing cold. And they do it with this, you know, there's no sense of order. There's a sense of roughing people up. I see questions for Katz, etc. I will make certain to get to... They tear gassed a senior woman in a wheelchair in Minnesota. Yeah. I mean, it's quite extraordinary. And this is just part of what's going on. Again, Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, and the mayor, Jacob Fry, they are asking people to bring cameras out, take pictures of what's going on. But Walz is urging locals to remain peaceful in their opposition to federal immigration crackdowns in the state. State investigators have been on the scene in North Minneapolis, he says. I know you're angry. I'm angry. This is Walz speaking. What Donald Trump wants is violence in the streets, but Minnesota will remain an island of decency, he says. An island of justice, of community, and of peace. Don't give him what he wants. Of course, Blanche, who's the number 2 at the Justice Department, blaming Minnesota leaders for all of this. ICE operates in thousands of counties without incident, but there in Minnesota, they're encouraging violence against law enforcement. I mean, nowhere do you see encouragement against law enforcement in a violent way.
Governor Walz is saying, let's tone down the temperature.
Yeah.
Protest, but don't encourage, right?
ICE may soon be conducting operations in Maine. Mayor Carl Schilling saying in a statement yesterday that ICE may conduct enforcement in Lewiston, Maine soon. Didn't provide any additional details. Quote, I understand that this is an unsettling time for many of our residents. Lewiston is a strong city and we care about our community and each other. Please check on your neighbors and stay safe. He urged residents and businesses to know their rights and prepare a plan of action in case ICE stops them. The Homeland Security Secretary, Assistant Secretary, Tricia McLaughlin is her name, said, every day DHS enforces the laws of the nation across the country. We do not discuss future or potential operations in Maine or anywhere else. The interesting thing from the perspective of politics in America is that Republicans are divided on the Trump crackdown with immigration. They are split. There was a poll released today, I think it was. This is a new one. It's from Reuters and Ipsos. It found that 59% of Republican respondents say they prefer federal immigration officers prioritize arrests even if people get hurt, while 39% said officers should limit harm to others even if they make fewer arrests as a result. More than 95% of Democratic respondents, on the other hand, said officers should focus on avoiding injuring people. Overall, 40% of respondents approved of Trump's handling of immigration, down from 50% just more than a month after he returned to office. Yesterday, I shared a poll with you saying that it's 20% fewer people approving of this ICE policy. This ties a new low among Reuters for the president on immigration dating back to his first term. Again, 40% of respondents approving of his handling of immigration.
Did you see the story that they arrested 3 Native Americans in these Minnesota sweeps, members of the Oglala Sioux tribe?
Yeah.
I mean, you want to talk about people who've been here the longest, and they're taking in Native Americans into custody.
Yeah, go back to where you came from. Oh, wait.
You're from here.
That's right.
You're from here before we were from here.
Unbelievable.
3 tribal members remain in custody, according to this tribe. They're demanding immediate federal action and government-to-government consultation. They said they have a memorandum to federal officials insisting on the release of their detained tribal members. Gee, I guess they looked too brown, huh?
Yeah, I mean, thank you. There you go. And they know how to push back, too. I mean, there's been no kind of persecution, right, in America like the original persecution of the native peoples. So we have a flash poll going in our YouTube chat.
It's a Mark Thompson Show flash poll.
Yes, and what is the story on it, Albert? Please give me the latest, if you would. Albert is our producer.
It's
Albert,
yeah,
thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, the answer yes to redirect funds to communities is at 58%, followed by reform it, don't defund, which is 33%.
The question again, Albert, could you share it with the boys and girls?
Should the U.S. defund ICE?
Yeah, so there are a couple of options there. I think the overhauling of ICE is warranted. And there it is. And there are your choices, and there are your answers. Please participate, and feel free to offer your thoughts on that. Do we have another flash poll next hour, or is this our flash poll for the day, Albert? I ask you.
I could cook up another one before.
Okay.
Albert, thank you.
I love it. It's just interesting always to know what the audience is thinking. That flash poll audio drop needs an image of one of those trench coat flasher toys.
It's a Mark Thompson flash poll. Yeah.
I love that.
It's a Mark Thompson Show flash poll.
Yeah, with a little bit. That's clever. Very, very. Amy, are you available? We'd like for you to join our team. Yeah.
That's funny.
I want to quickly check in. What's that, Kim?
I was going to ask if I have time to read an excerpt from Sarah Kenzier's Substack today.
You do. There's always time for Sarah Kenzior. And then I want to just mention before David gets here what's happening in Venezuela. I'll give you the story on the oil. I'll give you the story on the military. I'll give you the story on the Nobel Prize with, Trump's connection to the Venezuelan opposition leader who says, she can share the prize with Trump. Anyway, but first, Kim has something from Sarah Kenzior, which is, again, always a welcome thing. So,
The Mark Thompson Show.
Go ahead, Kim.
Really quick, if you haven't checked out sarahkenzior.substack.com, please do, because her writing is really amazing. And today she has something posted. It's beautifully written, and I can't read the whole thing, but these couple paragraphs really stood out to me. She said, people try to distinguish between ICE and police, but they operate as a tandem force. ICE is a new and unnecessary creation formed in 2003 that wages a war of terror on civilians. ICE obeys the wishes of elites who seek to break the law. For everyone else, ICE promises only fear. Good's crime, the woman who was killed, was that she was not fearful enough. Minnesota residents, writes Kenzior, determined to protect each other from ICE, are afraid and brave. The two are not mutually exclusive. To fight on behalf of others in the midst of abandonment from officials, derision from the press, and the threat of fatal force, that's not Minnesota nice. That's Minnesota noble.
Wow. She's so right, isn't she? She's always just so sharp and right. And when you look at what happened with the murder of that woman who's 37 years old, mother of 3, Sarah's right. They killed her because she wasn't scared. And they have a job, and that's to scare us. And it's worked well. Trump's authoritarian flex in Washington's worked well. The notion that you have all of these gun-toting thugs out there in America has worked well to scare legislators, judges. Minnesotans haven't been completely cowed, and certainly she was not. And then she was murdered. And with the cold-blooded move that was followed by the effing bitch, I mean, it was just, these guys are thugs. Russ said it, and it's true. The idea, I've talked about them as, they couldn't make, linebacker on the college team. And so now they're out on the streets. They're nightclub bouncers, taking time out of working at the strip club to work the streets of America, getting a $50,000 payout. Before I get to Katz, I've been talking about this, the application to work at ICE, and we have kind of a reducto of the story. It's a story about applying to be an ICE agent, and this is from someone who had a rich history of being critical of ICE and critical of this government. And she went just as a reporter to see what it would be like to apply for a job as an ICE agent. And she notes, and again, I was going to read the entire piece for you, but it's really long, and now I think I'm kind of reduced to just giving you bits and pieces. And she's been out there a bit with this story. It's achieved a kind of momentum on its own, but she's an anti-Trump reporter, and she's got military cred. She served in the military, and so she went to apply for a position with ICE, and she wrote about how she was, in effect, offered a position with ICE after a 6-minute conversation and interview. Didn't require her to complete a single signature on any agency paperwork. Her hiring and the entire process she details. And her plan was, she said, to learn about what it was like to apply to be an ICE agent. And ultimately, she shared a breakdown of how she somehow ended up getting hired by ICE, even after they said, it's going to take, a month for us to check your background, etc. DHS, she says, probably has no idea whether ICE offered me a job, which is kind of the point of the article. They have no idea what they're doing. After she finished high school, she enlisted in the U.S. Army, was deployed twice to Afghanistan with the 82nd Airborne Division. Then she worked as a civilian analyst. She's 38 years old, and she's openly critical of Trump and identifies as anti-ICE. And she wrote in her piece that she believed that, after a simple check of her social media, would disqualify her from being hired. But instead, she got an offer.
It's like they check your social media at the airport, but not to be an ICE agent? What?
They prioritize current law enforcement first, she said. They're going to adjudicate your resume. And then she was instructed to watch for an email outlining what to do next. And before leaving the event, she spoke with an active deportation officer who told her if she was hired, she would probably not hit the streets right away. And she said that she'd like to work a desk-based role. She writes in her article that when she said that, the officer you're speaking to, his demeanor changed, and he replied, just to be upfront, the goal is to put as many guns and badges out in the field as possible. That's the ICE goal, as articulated here. Then she got the email informing her she was being extended a tentative offer, directing her to log onto a government jobs portal and complete several attached forms. She said she didn't complete any of those forms, but she still got another email 3 weeks later thanking her for moving forward and asking her to schedule a drug test. She'd used cannabis within the past week before the scheduled test. 9 days later, she says she logged on to USA Jobs, checked her application to see if the drug test had come through. And what I saw, she said, was so implausible, so impossible, that at first I did not understand what I was looking at. She discovered that ICE appeared to have formally offered her a job, even though she had not submitted key documents, including a domestic violence affidavit, a background check authorization, any identification details. Her onboard status was shown as entered on duty. Obviously, she turned down the offer, and what she's trying to say is two things. They are sloppy in the way they're hiring and recruiting, and if they're this sloppy, how many domestic abusers are being given guns, sent into other people's homes? How many people with ties to white supremacist organizations are indiscriminately targeting minorities on principle, now part of ICE? She's pointing to the fact that there is a sloppiness to all of this and an aggression to all of this that both turbocharges the hiring process without regard to someone's background and ends up endangering and even in some instances killing Americans. I think that piece is revealing. And she did a long, long piece, I think, in her Substack, but it's also been reprinted in a lot of places like The Guardian, etc. So,
The Mark Thompson Show.
ICE just said today they hired thousands of ICE agents unintentionally due to an AI mistake, whatever that means. Well, I mean, I told you yesterday that AI has been granted complete access to both classified and unclassified materials from the Pentagon. Pete Hegseth made that statement himself. So if AI is making these excuses or making for an excuse when it comes to hiring, I wonder what the excuses will be when classified military information gets out into the public sphere because AI has, quote, made a mistake. The founder of the Proud Boys works for ICE now, says Ole Hansen. Yeah. All right. This man joins us on Thursdays. He's not just a man. He's a former federal prosecutor. He is one of the esteemed legal analysts in the English-speaking world, now a defense attorney in Southern California, David Katz, everyone. Hi, David.
Great to be with you.
Wow. The situation on the ground in Minnesota seems fraught with all kinds of legal issues. Donald Trump is now talking about, and he's spoken of it several times along the way, but now just in the last day, about the Insurrection Act and invoking the Insurrection Act with regard to what's going on in Minnesota. This feels like a precursor to maybe more widespread use of the invocation of that act. Can you speak to this legally?
Well, I think the governor of Minnesota and the mayor of Minneapolis have to really take heed right now that the main mission is to make sure they do not give rope or grounds to Trump to invoke the Insurrection Act. I think one of the things that they should do today is to order a curfew tonight to be enforced by not ICE, but enforced by the local police and local forces. You remember what happened here in LA? There was very little actually disturbance, but there was one night that things got a little bit out of control. And by the next night, our mayor, who's taken a lot of criticism, but you know, people need to stand up for the good things that Mayor Bass has done. She ordered a curfew, and that was one of the reasons why the courts were ultimately able to say, look, there wasn't an out-of-control situation. There was no need to federalize the National Guard. I'm worried that what they're going to do in Minneapolis right now is to give grounds to Trump, who's just chomping at the bit to invoke the Insurrection Act. One thing about the cases in California, ultimately, Trump lost. And one of the reasons that Trump lost was because there was demonstrably no emergency. But that may not be the situation in Minnesota if this goes on night after night. And that's why I strongly recommend that there be a curfew and that there be very diligent efforts by the local authorities there to tamp down any violence, which is not just to say, go home, we want to tamp down violence, but to actually get the cops out there, to get maybe the state National Guard under the governor's control to tamp it down. Because review of what's happened there, or what would happen there, would be by the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals. And that really matters. The 9th Circuit batted it around for a while and ultimately said the deployment here in Los Angeles was illegal. That's what they said. Trump lost. He had to back off. He had to back off in Chicago. Chicago was the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals, Mark. Those are both substantially more moderate to liberal circuits than the 8th Circuit. The 8th Circuit's composed of one blue state, Minnesota, and the rest are all red states that make up the 8th Circuit. It's the Dakotas, and down from Minnesota, it's Iowa, it's Missouri, it's Arkansas. They are a notoriously pro-government, right-wing circuit. It's full of Trump appointees and other Republican appointees who are liable to vote with Trump. There was a famous FTC case, the click to unsubscribe case, where the 8th Circuit overturned the FTC on what was a really simple pro-consumer issue. And it seemed like it got steered to the 8th Circuit, and it seems like the big corporations that didn't want to have the click to cancel steered it to the 8th Circuit, and it was just a devastating opinion. So my point is that they're really playing with fire there in Minneapolis. They have an awful lot to be angry about. I get it. But tonight, when ICE goes and tries to apprehend somebody who's on their target list or who's not on their target list after dark, there needs to be a curfew so that people don't come out to the streets night after night, because a couple of nights like that is going to give Trump all the rope that he needs. He'll call out. And let me just make this point really quick, Mark. You know, what happened in the case in the U.S. Supreme Court just before Christmas was that it was kind of a technicality. What the Supreme Court said was that Trump has to try regular troops first. And what he's done in federalizing National Guards and bringing in, other kinds of officers like that, was that he had not tried regular troops first. And so he's got to try the regular troops. That's the wording of the particular statute he was trying to call out and federalize the National Guard over. He'll say, okay, game on. You know exactly how Trump deals with these kind of things. Game on. I have to call out the regular troops first. Watch this. I'm going to call out the regular troops. He's going to send the Army into Minneapolis under the Insurrection Act, and that will be reviewed by the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals, which is very pro-Trump. Don't do it, Mayor. Don't do it, Governor. Don't give him rope. He's playing you. He's playing you. He's playing all those demonstrators whose hearts are breaking, but he's playing them to go out into the streets. There's a certain percentage after dark that are anarchists, that are troublemakers, and that's all that will show on TV, Fox on an endless loop. And that's what the 8th Circuit will point to when they say it was fine to call out the military, the Army, into blue American cities. Don't give him the chance.
Just to say it as an aside, the military, and I don't want to see them deployed. I don't want to see Trump further emboldened by having a sense of breaking the seal on bringing in the military. But those troops, at least I know that they're well trained and will likely retain some sense of an allegiance to orders that are legal. On the other hand, now, I mean, I don't know what those orders will be. I feel the ICE agents are utter thugs. They're just goons. They will do anything. They are there to stir up trouble. They're there to beat people up. They really get their jollies doing that. Whereas I feel the military, they don't want to be there. We don't want them there. Please, I mean, see what I first said, which is I don't want the military there. But I feel as though there's a regimentation, maybe I could say it that way, to the military that we just don't see in the world of those ICE agents, you know.
Mark, you make a great point, but one of the problems here is that we don't want it to be normalized
exactly
that there are Army and troops in the streets, because we're all scared that the next time they'll be in the streets, or at least a future time they'll be in the streets, will be during the vote for the federal offices in later this year. And so we don't want that to be normalized. Let them try to call ICE out during the vote in November 2026. We can deal with that. That'll be like a parody. That'll be stupid. But
it'll be stupid. But let me just say that he's hiring tens of thousands of more ICE agents. You understand that budget is incredibly huge. It's been created so that this private army can grow in size, and it may be cartoonish to do it, but he will deploy ICE everywhere he wants to across the country when the elections come around.
It's gargantuan, but what I meant by it's cartoonish was that the idea of ICE being called out while people are voting in the elections, on the face of it sounds absurd. But if we've had the military in big cities and it's been affirmed by the courts because there have been so many disturbances that don't get tamped down, then I think that'll be a very bad look. A lot of people will be intimidated. I think that Trump will be more likely to call out the troops if the troops have been allowed to be called out than if all he's got is ICE. And I know ICE is completely crazy. It's gargantuan how many they have. It really is an invasion. That's not hyperbole. There are apparently 5 or 6 times as many ICE agents in Minneapolis as there are police in Minneapolis. They have completely, they've swamped the place. And I know what they're doing is absolutely awful and what they did to poor Renee Good. But can I talk about that issue for a minute, Mark?
The Renee Good issue? Sure.
A lot of people have said, well, it's terrible. And it is terrible. And they said that when Stephen Miller and these other people go around and they say they have immunity, these ICE agents, they don't have immunity. They have a fairly effective type of immunity, Mark. That is the truth. It's unfortunate. It's terrible that Stephen Miller and the others are encouraging them by telling them that they effectively have immunity to a great extent, because you worry that the most unhinged among them will do completely lawless things. And of course, what they did with Renee Good was awful. And what they did yesterday in firing off those rounds, when we get to the bottom of what happened there and so many other incidents. But here's the reality. We need, and some scholars have written about this, we need a federal law, and we've had for 50 years, that applies the 1983 statutes, which bar state and local officers from doing federally unconstitutional things, to not allow federal agents to do federally unconstitutional things. Now, it may seem unbelievable that you cannot go into court and sue a federal agent for violating federal law. Guess what? You largely cannot in this country. The way the Civil Rights Acts were written, Mark, they covered state and local officers. That made some sense 100 years ago, or more than 100 years ago, because the problem was you had this federal army that was trying to have Reconstruction. You had these federal officials who were trying to do the right thing, and you had all these state and local officers that were impeding them, that were violating federal law. And so that's why the statute is structured that way. Now, back in the 60s, early 70s, we had this case called 6 unnamed DEA agents. And the U.S. Supreme Court said from the Constitution itself, there should be a right of action. And there was this right of action. But, Mark, that is one of the things that the conservative Nixon majorities did, and the courts have done ever since. They've cut back and cut back on what you can bring. Those were DEA agents. And this idea that the Constitution just inherently gives you rights to sue officers has been cut back and cut back. This is worse than the qualified immunity. The local and state officers have qualified immunity, which says there has to be clearly established federal law that any reasonable officer would know that he or she was violating. That's bad enough. But that doesn't even apply to federal officers. So there's a real question, and I think the answer is that they cannot. I think that the Renee Good family cannot sue this officer who shot Renee under current law. And that's something that the Congress can change, and they ought to do that. They ought to do it by such huge majorities that they can override Trump's veto. We've needed a law like that for 50 years. And whenever the Supreme Court gets one of those awful cases where federal officials have just blatantly violated somebody's federal constitutional rights, the Supreme Court says something like, well, Congress could address this problem. For 50 years, Congress could address this problem in the Renee Good Act, and they ought to pass a Renee Good Act in her honor and make it clear that you can sue federal officials for violating federal law. Can they be prosecuted? Yes, right? Like that fellow was, that officer was up there in Minnesota, and like some other state officers have been around the country. And maybe some federal officers can be prosecuted, right? You can prosecute, but Trump has made it clear that he's not going to prosecute, Mark. And so this fellow, this shooter, is not going to be prosecuted by the federal government. That's absolutely clear. They can dance around it. Todd Blanche can say all those things. They're not dancing that much. They're making it pretty clear. They are not going to prosecute him. They're not very interested in what the results of the investigation are. They're not even allowing the state or locals to investigate this officer and what happened to Renee Good. And so we need this law, Mark.
No, it seems everything you said, you've argued effectively, and it seems as though it's way overdue. But I always look to the political considerations, and you're talking about passing legislation in Congress. You have to sort of put the votes together, and you have the right, at least right now. They're certainly not going to name the bill what you suggested it be named.
Donald Trump, the Donald Trump Act.
Right, and Donald Trump doesn't want anybody suing anybody who is acting on his behalf, so it may go orphaned for a time longer. This is interesting, just as an aside, also because we're talking about it. Harry Magnan says, here's to the coolest cats. Please ask the coolest cats, what exactly are my rights if I am stopped by ICE?
Well, if the fellow knows that he's got his papers in order, that's certainly in the real world how he ought to respond, right? If he really doesn't have papers in order, let's say he's illegally in the country, you could see where he might want to dance around with the officers a little bit and try to like make the best impression that he possibly can, not be too assertive about his rights, because as soon as he's assertive about his rights, the ICE agents will freak out and overreact. But certainly, if your papers are in order and you're a citizen, you have no reason not to say, I know my rights. I don't have to answer any of your questions. But in those stressful situations, a lot of times people answer, and it's a Hobson's choice, right? You don't kind of know what to do in that situation, and no matter what good legal advice you have is in your head, people get scared in that situation. So I guess the answer is,
I'm sorry, the answer is what?
Well, I guess the answer is very personal. It's like the fellow who gets stopped who's not drunk at all, and they say, well, if you won't give the breathalyzer, we're going to take you to the police station. You think, I don't have 3 hours to go screw around at the police station. I've had half a drink. I'll blow into the breathalyzer. You blow into the breathalyzer. You say to the officer, I can't believe you stopped me. I was 0.02. I had half a drink, and that's what a lot of people do. That's probably what a lot of lawyers would do, because they think, I don't have 4 hours to assert my rights.
Sure, exactly. And now you see assertion of your rights is greeted with a kind of violence. I mean, there is an intent here to rough people up. I mean, it's a scary thing.
Can I say one more thing about that, Mark? Can I say one more thing? I've heard all these commentators. It's been horrifying to watch. I've seen all these commentators, and I like the whole diversity of opinion. But the commentators who say they can't understand how this is happening, why aren't people trying to, why isn't everyone trying to sort of get along? Trump does not want to get along. Trump wants to escalate. This is all by design. This is all to create these shots of these TV shots that he likes, things that are going to arouse his base. He's just waiting now for some officer to get killed or wounded in this. Right now, he wants to bring out the Insurrection Act because the ICE has killed somebody, not because anybody at ICE has gotten killed, right? You wait for somebody at ICE to get, and that is exactly what he's hoping for. People who think he's cynical, that he has bad intent, more squared, right, to the third power. That's exactly what he wants to do, and that's why people shouldn't play into his hands. He doesn't want some compromise. He doesn't want some deal where the sanctuary cities say you can do this and the government will back down and do that. They won't bring out the ICE if they allow felons out of the sanctuary cities laws. That's not what he wants. It's the same reason he doesn't want any immigration bill. It's why he said at the end of Biden's term, when that conservative senator from Oklahoma had worked out an immigration compromise, Trump said, don't sign it. He loves to run on this issue. By now, it's his only semi-popular issue, although with the depredations of ICE, that's not even popular with the American people anymore, the immigration issue for Trump.
Professor Katz, can we linearly progress from Insurrection Act to martial law to canceled midterm elections, asks Luis. I see Minnesota, says Luis, as a testing ground that will spread. Is that the idea? Insurrection Act invoked, then martial law, then canceled midterm elections? David Katz?
Well, I think the Insurrection Act would work to the point that there would not be a basis to impose martial law. But if we get to the point where the Insurrection Act is working, where it's been affirmed by the courts, that's a terrible situation. Whether the Army is more disciplined than ICE, I give you that. You just did that story about how they'll hire anybody. They'll hire a ham sandwich. They say a grand jury will indict a ham sandwich. ICE will hire a ham sandwich. But having the military. I mean, look at all the countries that have the military out in the big cities. It always is bad. And, people disrespect them. They violate rules. As regimented as they are, all sorts of bad things happen. They're not trained in crowd control. That's not their thing. Their thing is killing the enemy in war. We're not the enemy. We're protesters here in America.
Yeah. Also, I guess this is just on the heels of what you were saying before. Uncle Jim is saying, a question for David Katz. Can or will Minnesota state or local authorities sue over being shut out of the investigation into the killing of Good? If so, what are their prospects?
One of the things which is good is that there's a civil lawsuit. It's already started. Some lawyers in Minnesota are suing on behalf of Renee Good's survivors. They'll be able to get civil discovery under the discovery rules. So they'll go to the FBI and the others and demand all these records so they can prove their case. And I think they'll be entitled to them under civil discovery. So believe it or not, only in America, the state and local authorities may not be able to get records of a shooting right in their backyard, killing in their own backyard. But civil plaintiffs may be able to get it because they'll bring a lawsuit. As I said, they're going to have problems with their lawsuit. But they'll be smart. They'll try to frame their lawsuit to at least stay in court long enough to get discovery. The federal government will say what I just said before, that you don't have any right to sue a federal officer for violation of federal duty in court. And if they bring it in state court, they'll try to remove it to federal court. But as I say, if they plead it artfully and they know what they're doing, they'll at least get discovery. As to the local officials, they can find a lot of this stuff. I think that they can find, and I think it's pretty much untested. I've never seen, Mark, anything like this. We've had lots of joint investigations, and of course, they've always wanted the state to be involved because the state has some resources that the feds don't have. They have some things that they bring to it, plus local support of it. So there's no reason why the federal government, if they want to get to the truth, don't want state and local authorities involved. My point here is that the federal investigation does not want to get to the truth, Mark. It's got a predetermined goal, which is that this officer is supposedly to be cleared, and this poor victim and her family are to be vilified. Can you imagine, Mark, if they were conducting a federal investigation of Charlie Kirk's widow? By the way, Kimmel should stay off the topic of Charlie Kirk entirely.
Sure.
I'm not suggesting this inquiry for Jimmy Kimmel. But can you imagine? They're going after the widow's family. And it's so outrageous, Mark, that they're going after the widow's family, that's why 6 federal prosecutors quit in Minneapolis. 6 of them who are actually handling that case against the Somalis that are involved in the massive fraud. Trump claims he cares about the Somalis and the massive fraud case, and now he's maneuvered in a way that he's made it impossible ethically for those attorneys to stay in their jobs. So the 6 attorneys who are bringing the massive Somali fraud case have now all left because they realized that this is a fixed investigation, and they don't want to be part of a fixed investigation which has a predetermined outcome, which is to clear somebody. As a federal prosecutor, when you realize that's the way the wind is blowing, you say, you know what, let it blow that way with somebody else, but not me. I have a career, I have my ethics to think about, and I'm out. So
we played the interview with Pam Bondi, who said, I fired 6 people from the Justice Department. She claimed they were part of a liberal agenda, et cetera. They were, and so she was on Sean Hannity with saying, I fired them, Sean. I sure did. They're not welcome here, and I'm glad we rooted them out. And I'm thinking, wow, that's the spin. They resigned in protest, and you claimed that you fired them. Yesterday, the FBI raided the home of a Washington Post reporter, and they said they were looking for illegally retained classified government documents and materials. I wonder if you could speak to this. This is really, again, something that you just don't find much in the history of this country recently, the raiding of a reporter's home, except to intimidate. And in any case, this happened at the home of this Washington Post reporter in Virginia yesterday.
There are some journalistic shield laws. And it's been an issue for a long time. There was a famous case that involved Stanford University's, I think, student newspaper. And there's been discussion about journalistic shield laws, but there are really no binding journalistic shield laws that protect a journalist, like even at the Washington Post, such an esteemed publication, the mainstream media, from a search like this, because they went to a federal judge, they got a search warrant. It's just one-sided. The person who's about to be searched doesn't get to opine before the search warrant is issued. If the search was illegal, or if there was some journalistic shield law that protected it, then the search could be suppressed later on, and the fruits of the search could be given back to the person who was wrongly searched. But I don't think any of that's really going to happen here, because supposedly some Pentagon materials, supposedly some classified materials were taken, and the person who supposedly took them is, according to Bondi, quote, behind bars. And they think that this is the person who then published or helped to disseminate, this reporter was the one who helped to do that. Now, if the reporter broke the law, that is an exception to the journalistic shield laws, that if the journalist is suspected of criminal conduct, then it's sort of more like anyone who's suspected of criminal conduct. But where the reporter is nothing but the conduit for information that they're trying to disseminate to the world, this is, of course, extremely controversial. But except for trying to suppress the warrant because it's illegal, and to not allow any of the stuff to be disseminated and to be given back to the reporter, I think that's probably her remedy. And of course, the outrage that they're doing something like this, because this is politically an overreach. But I think legally, I mean, her house was searched, so that didn't, some judge issued the warrant. Now, do they shop around these warrants, federal agents, to judges they like? I know we had a state case where a sheriff went to a particular judge because the sheriff got along with the judge, and before you know it, there was a warrant issued, and that was for a lawyer's office. I represented a lawyer. Do you know that this county does not even appoint a district attorney to a case like that? The officer goes to the judge that they like in LA County. This is not in the third world someplace. In LA County, they go to a judge that they like. They get a search warrant. They search a lawyer's office. And when you call up and you say to the DA's office, this is outrageous, what the hell happened here? They say to you, well, there's no DA on this case. Just the sheriff and the judge. So did they go to a judge who was particularly favorable to them? I don't know. But if they went to a judge who was particularly favorable to them, and that judge again, affirms the validity of that warrant, they can go up to the Court of Appeal. So there is some review of this, and the journalist herself is apparently not in trouble. But can you imagine? I mean, anyone else?
As you say, they've already searched the premises.
They take all of your electronic devices,
Yeah, exactly.
and they disrupt your life, and your neighbors freak out, and your significant others and your kids freak out.
Exactly. Yeah. The damage and the message is out there already. They are at the Department of Justice. I have justice in quotes. They are investigating more Democratic lawmakers over that military video. Jason Crow, Maggie Goodlander, Chrissy Houlihan, saying that they've been contacted by federal prosecutors following the video that criticized Donald Trump and encouraging members of the military. I mean, the criticism of Trump was implied. It wasn't specific, but encouraging members of the military not to follow illegal orders. I mean, that literally was the extent of the video. And yet, wow, we've seen what they're doing to Mark Kelly, and now they're going after other legislators. What is the legal standing here? Because Kelly is pushing back and actually suing Hegseth and the Pentagon, but he's seeing his rank reduced, et cetera.
Well, the two sayings about the Department of Justice is the Department of Injustice, and an old chestnut, the Department of Just Us. And this is sort of the Department of Just Us. It's, you have to be a little kooky and right wing. This is not the way for normal people. Just, to be the most brilliant person at the Department of Justice, you don't rise to the top, in my opinion, the way the Department of Justice is and some of these other cabinet agencies. To me, this is the D or the D- or F team. You just showed Hegseth up here, Bondi, Kash Patel at the FBI, this Bongino who just went back to his radio show or whatever. These are really the F team, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., that these people are in government. 50 years from now, they'll look back and they'll say, had they all lost their mind? How did the Senate ever approve this gang? So this is Just Us. This is the D team that's in power there. All of these congressmen and Congress members and this senator, they're all going to be okay. There's no there there. They simply pointed out that it is not required that a military personnel obey an illegal order, abide by an illegal order. They made that very clear, an illegal order. And that's, of course, black letter law. And they weren't saying anything even controversial. So this is nothing, Mark, except an attempt to punish them.
It's harassment is basically what you're saying. No, of course, it's an attempt to punish them. But yeah.
If I were advising them, Mark, though, I would not give this FBI interview. To me, the FBI interview is some kind of a perjury trap. It's to try to do the same thing that they did with Comey, asking, well, wasn't this like something else that happened 5 years? And then say, oh, no, it wasn't like the thing that happened 5 years ago. And this and that. So you just committed perjury.
Right.
I think what they ought to do is have the FBI submit any questions that they want to ask, and then they should answer those questions on the floor of the House or the floor of the Senate. There's no question that they have immunity, speech and debate clause for what they say there. But to go give, remember, what was it? Kelly gave an interview to the FBI, not Kelly. What was his name? He'd been the national security advisor for about 10 days, and he was under suspicion. Trump first term. He gave that interview to the FBI, and then he got prosecuted for what he said during the interview. Now, of course, what he said was outlandish. They said, "Did you ever meet with the Russian ambassador?" He said no, and they had pictures and recordings of him meeting with the Russian ambassador.
Was that Michael Flynn?
Michael Flynn, yes.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not saying that any of these Congress members would do anything like that, but you see, it has that dynamic once they agree, because you can be prosecuted for making a false statement to an FBI agent. That's different from perjury, just making a false statement to an FBI agent. I'm worried to talk about, not the FBI so much, the IRS, they're pretty straightforward, but you take DHS or ICE, I would never meet with one of them alone. I would always want to have a witness, because if they say, whether you're a criminal defense lawyer or you're a member of Congress like these folks are, and they say that you said something that wasn't so, that's a federal making a false statement. And of course, it would be their word, although I imagine in this situation, it would be very carefully transcribed and recorded. But I don't think they should get themselves in that situation. I think that they should say, if you have any questions, submit your questions to me and answer them on the floor of the House or the Senate under the speech and debate clause.
Now, I hate to have to skip over a lot of these other topics to get to this one, but I literally only have my one more shot here with David Katz. And so this is a bit odd. It's a little out of the world of politics and this Trump regime. 26 people charged in connection with alleged basketball game fixing. The college basketball games and pro basketball game contests in China are apparently the target of this FBI probe. And federal prosecutors are saying 26 people are involved in this rigging of college basketball games in America and, again, pro games in China. And the suspects face a bunch of charges, including bribery in sports, conspiracy to commit wire fraud, and aiding and abetting a wire fraud. Indictments were unsealed in Philadelphia, and this looks like and what they're calling a transnational criminal scheme to fix NCAA Division I men's basketball games, as well as professional Chinese Basketball Association games. It's quite an extensive crew, and the high stakes gamblers are involved. Trainers Jalen Smith and Roderick Winkler are involved. Speak to two things: A, this indictment, and also it's interesting how we have a sense of purity in sports that somehow compels this kind of indictment of those who are involved in point-shaving schemes.
Well, the case is in Philadelphia, and I think W.C. Fields said on his tombstone, "I'd rather be here than in Philadelphia." I'm sure they are not happy about being in Philadelphia, all of these indictees.
Well, how dare you? I love my Philly viewers and listeners. Yeah.
We played Philadelphia in the playoffs. Remember that? The Dodgers in Philadelphia. It sure looked like with Schwarzer and that other big star.
Oh,
there.
yeah, that's right. The Phillies are,
that's my aunt lives in Philadelphia, so just having a little fun because she
okay, good save. Good save.
Hi, Alana.
Yeah.
Hi, Alana. Anyway, so, this was inevitable. And the point shaving, people who bet the players, I think, and the coaches say, oh, come on, it wasn't really that bad. All the people doing bad things in the world. It wasn't who was going to win and who was going to lose. I wasn't making my team have a worst record. I was just shaving some points. And
making it so that they don't quite cover the spread.
The spread, and these people are running around betting on the spread. And what does it really matter? Like I say, you didn't throw the game. And these people run around and bet on the spread. I suppose now, if you're really smart, right? If you're really smart, you have to think of everything under the sun. Like you have to think of the weather. Remember a horse race? I got the horse right here. But if the weather's clear, right, the horse can do. But if the weather's not clear, so you got to know every single aspect of what you're betting about. Now you have to, I guess, figure out whether you're betting on a team that's corrupt or not. So maybe you say to yourself, this fellow was playing in China. There's a lot of corruption in China. Maybe he picked up some bad corrupt habits with that team in China. I'm not gonna be a punter on this one. I'm not gonna put my money into it. I mean, it's hard to feel a great deal of sympathy. I was a federal prosecutor. I prosecuted a case, Mark, where they fixed the alpha beta lottery. You get the scratch off and you have a chance to win $1 million and stuff like that. And like their brother-in-law, not only did he win once, but talk about temerity. Then they had another contest that they were promoting and they had to win again.
I mean, that's just stupid. I mean, at some point they're going to go, guys, seriously? You didn't think somebody was going to figure something out? Let me just give you a couple of details here. In April of 2023, after the CBA season had finished, there was a package that was placed into Antonio Blakeney's storage unit in Florida, which contained nearly $200,000 in cash, representing bribe payments and proceeds from the fixed CBA games. The CBA, Albert, those are the Chinese games. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay,
yes.
And the scheme moved to college basketball games in the United States after that, during the 2023, 2024, and 24-25 seasons, according to prosecutors. And Blakeney, again, he's the guy's the gambler, agreed to recruit NCAA players who would accept bribe payments, according to court papers. Payments range from $10,000 to $30,000 a game, and those payments were made to college players. So that's a little bit of an outline of the scheme itself, and it's I mean, it's the real thing. And this Blakeney guy was a former college basketball player playing hoops at the time, so you realize that may not seem like a lot of money. It seems like a lot to me, but I mean, I guess to these gamblers, they're dealing with hundreds of thousands of dollars. But for $10,000 to $30,000, if you're a young guy as a college player, I mean, as you say, not to throw the game, just to miss a free throw. No,
I don't think that like in my case, they got convicted, but the judge was like, why don't you bring us some red meat fraud case? And of course, these are not as sympathetic as, some poor old lady who gets her, life savings taken from her for an oil well swindle or something like that, or even these other major frauds cases that I used to bring. But I just thought that one, especially, when they do it a second time, Mark,
that's so rich. I love that.
It says, that case that you declined because it wasn't like a huge major fraud. It wasn't like some poor old lady losing her life savings. They did it again. Yeah. You say, you know what? You are going to be indicted. You did it again. But
there's a great couple of YouTube. People should check it out maybe after this show. But you might enjoy, many of you, the ways in which the lottery has been fixed. And there have been attempts to fix it because it's changed a lot of the ways. Those little ping pong balls that come up in the machine that blows them up or whatever. That was something that was manipulated. And there all of these ways in which people through the decades have tried to manipulate the lottery or lottery-like scams. And they're worth a look, because it's now it's become a bit more sophisticated, maybe a lot more sophisticated. You also have to hit all of these numbers to hit the lottery at all. So, it's these scams and schemes to, win a lottery or in this point shaving thing, it seems like it is of a kind, the same sort of thing.
So, Mark, one last thought, if you don't mind. So during the pandemic, when the only guests they wanted were virologists, are we going to survive this thing or not? They call me and they want me to be on the BBC. That's the first time I was ever on the BBC. And I said, what's it about? They said, somebody fixed the South African lottery. Apparently there's some huge prize like the Powerball here, and somebody had fixed the South African lottery. And on the BBC, it ran like third story after, was there a cure for COVID, and was there something else? And you love to do the British accent. You do it better than I do. But the BBC reporter says to me something, because I'd had this case where they fixed the alpha beta contest, 20 or 30 years ago, but it's on the internet. So he says to me, you long-time lottery experts. So for a long time, my friends were calling me a long-time lottery expert. So if you want to have
that. That's my new handle for you. Long-time lottery expert, David Katz. Yeah. I do love it.
Come out yet, but I'm still strong on they're going to invalidate the tariffs, and that Chief Justice Roberts is trying to get a bigger majority than 5-4 to do it. He wants to do it with more than 5 votes if he can.
Oh, that's interesting. That really is interesting.
And that's what's taking a while.
Yeah, they're considering that right now. So love you, David Katz. Thank you.
Love you guys.
Yeah. David Katz, everybody. See you next Thursday, sir. Bravo. Bravo. Mark Thompson Show. Yeah.
Feel it in your soul. The Mark Thompson Show.
Who's Mark Thompson? Smash it with your iron rod.
There's a reason that this place is fun.
I'm not gonna cry.
Have you ever been a member of the Chinese Communist Party?
Morning.
You cannot say you love your country.
There's always been, in this country, 30 to 35% idiots.
Where are my weed smokers at?
I love it when you're angry.
Can you let him finish, sir?
Seriously, what the
This is no summer camp.
It was great. I loved it.
I loved it. It was a great show. It's been a great life. I'm enjoying all my time drinking in our wonderful audience, our wonderful guests, my wonderful colleagues. Yes, speaking of drinking. Mm-hmm. We haven't mentioned Coachella Valley Coffee all day today, and
That's right.
Yeah. How can we go through an entire day and not mention Coachella Valley Coffee? I mean,
travesty.
Thank you.
No,
I blame you.
Yes,
I
it's probably
blame
my
you.
fault. Peacefully Resist, my mug. Peacefully Resist is holding the greatest coffee on earth. Coachella.
Baby girl, don't even play.
CoachellaValleyCoffee.com is where you can get the greatest coffee on earth, also the greatest tea that will ever pass your lips, and terrific. There's our decaf, which is made in Peru. It's the Why Are You Yelling? Mark Thompson Show decaf. If you need to go to decaf, I mean,
Why are you yelling?
I do have to say that my doctor has told me to back off because I'm having like 11 cups of coffee a day. He feels that's a little much.
Nothing.
Yeah. So I backed off a little bit, but I'm mixed the decaf in sometimes with some of the other stuff. But all of these great tasting notes. There's the chai tea, the blended touch, and there are loose. What do you call it? Loose leaf? Is that what you call it?
It's loose leaf tea. We talked to Belinda the other day trying to save the planet about plastic tea bags. And I don't know if you can show them, Albert, but they have on CoachellaValleyCoffee.com these tea bags, which are all natural. They have just a white string. They don't even have staples. There's no plastic involved. And they come in a set of 100?
Wow.
Yeah, for $10, and it's taken me months and months. I have a stainless steel thing that I usually use, but they have great tea bags there, and you get the loose leaf tea, just a little pinch of tea, boom, and it's so good.
There's never been anything like this.
Yeah, CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Use Mark T at checkout for 10% off. Do what Kim does, the loose leaf, or you the bag tea. There's no plastic.
Nope.
It is healthy. It is wonderful. It's all organic, ethically sourced from women-owned farms. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Again, Mark T. Check out everything on the website. You want to buy their merch, you can get 10% off.
Highly
with
recommended.
Mark T. at checkout. Highly recommended by the wonderful
The Mark Thompson Show.
We must sadly... Well, we must sadly...
We're clapping for that?
That was an abrupt... Kathleen Marshall. What about a super sticker from Kathleen Marshall? Big shout out.
Big shout out.
We are, as my accountant said, as we looked at the grim figures, he said, well, what do you expect? You're working for tips.
Yeah, exactly. It's like we're up at the piano bar with a fishbowl.
That is what we do. We work for tips on the show. And Kathleen Marshall is nice enough to give us a tip of a $10 super sticker. Thank you, and a big shout out again. Ren Earls or Ren Aries? I've always wondered what it would be like to live in Russia, says Ren Aries. Yes, it's sad.
Big shout out.
Big shout out. Thank you for the $5 super chat. But I mean, it does, sadly have a lot of the echoes of authoritarianism that we've seen rise in other places. And, we've really had the luxury of living in a nation that has been corrupt in many, many ways, but we've never seen the rise of authoritarians the way we're seeing it now. This is another level, I think, of all of that. Hi, Mark. Will you be so kind to ask David Katz if he knows about what Zionist extremists are doing in Patagonia?
My fault that I didn't.
No, well, I'm not gonna blindside David Katz with something, because if you don't know what's happening there, it can be a bit. But I was gonna read the rest of it. How they have a plan B if the Palestine plan collapses. They are setting controlled fires in order to settle there. I don't know anything about that, so maybe you can send me something on that. But it's a luxury to have David Katz, but I always feel like if you have a David Katz thing, first of all, thank you for the super chat. I don't mean to get past that. You're really generous, Chaplain Fred. But if you have a specific like that, please email me, and then I can integrate it into the agenda with David Katz, because you can tell I had to shelf a lot of stuff today that I was going to talk to David Katz about, because he's very thorough in his responses. So again, if you want to reach us, it's themarkthompsonshow@gmail.com. themarkthompsonshow@gmail.com. So I just wanted to express your show is so refreshing and objectively informative. It's like the days of KGO News Talk Radio in the Bay Area back in the 70s and 80s.
Wow.
That from Toes Over Kauai. Big shout out. Thank you. Thank you for that compliment. We work hard to try to bring you good stuff. themarkthompsonshow@gmail.com is our address. What is that?
That was a holiday mix.
Oh, it was a holiday mix left over? Oh, that's
willing
great.
to bet my lunch that there's alcohol involved.
Smash the like button like a boss on your way out.
With your iron rod.
And do it like you mean it, It helps us in the world of YouTube. I'd like to hang out all day. I'm going over to KFI Radio today, those in Los Angeles, or listening on the iHeartRadio app. Don't do a lot of politics and news the way we do on this show there. It's kind of more like there's some stuff that's sort of LA-based. I don't know. But I mention it because when I don't mention it, I always hear, how come you didn't mention you're going to be on KFI? So there, I've mentioned it. So I'll be doing that this afternoon. That's Pacific time, by the way. We are into the afternoon hours on the west coast of the United States. Those of you who listen across the world, we are so grateful for your support. Thank you for liking this video. Thank you for sharing our conversations. Maybe you want to share the Russ Baker. Maybe you want to share the David Katz. It really does make a difference if you share it on Facebook and kind of just build our footprint. So thanks, Albert. Thank you, Kim. And now the great Shadow in the Sky.
I'm Shadow Stevens for the Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
Kim's doing the after party, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Out of time. Bye-bye.
Out of time. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.